Hi, everybody, and welcome back to day number 6 for our holiday self-care event. Today, we're going to be talking about giving yourself permission to rest and recharge. And I know that for me, resting is very hard. I find that sometimes it's like boring and hard to slow down, but it's such a necessary thing that we need to do to make sure that we stay recharged over the holiday season. Today we have Kellsey, our OT, on the call. I'm so excited to have you here today. Kellsey, are you able to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do at the clinic and what occupational therapy is and maybe how it might relate to our topic today?
Sure. I'm happy to be here this morning too. So I'm an occupational therapist, and occupational therapists do a lot of different things, but as it relates to this topic, it's really thinking about our individual brain profiles and kind of those fundamental skills that we need day to day, and using those skills to do our self-care tasks, whether that's getting ready in the morning, sleeping, or eating. Our productivity things are like whether you're a student or going to work, or if you're a child, that's your play, or your leisure activities, things that you like to do for fun. And rest means something different to everybody, and how we engage in rest is different. And you even said yourself, right? Sometimes you find it boring. So maybe your rest might look a little different than mine, which is perfectly normal. So as an OT here in the clinic, I've really enjoyed working with people across the lifespan and figuring out what their individual profiles are, what are their strengths, and how to create that balance in their life.
So if somebody was struggling to just rest in general, they said like, I can't rest, I can't slow down, that might be an area that you're able to work with somebody to help them find the best way to rest for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just starting with have that compassionate curiosity as to, why is rest so challenging and what's going on for them, and figuring out what rest means to them and how we create that balance and work together, because it's going to look different for everybody. And that's the joy of OT. There's no one session that's the same.
Awesome. Well, I'm so happy to have you here on the call, and I might even ask you tips that apply to me for practical reasons. But I'm excited to hear about these 5 tips that you have for us today, because the holiday season can be very busy. When I was talking to some clients at the beginning of December, I think that one of the key things that we were kind of trying to work with is planning that break. So if you have multiple events back to back, to kind of make sure that when you come home, you don't have a whole bunch of chores to do or housework, and plan it out so that when you come back from being in a social event, you can rest and recharge. And then we started thinking about like, maybe we need to rest and recharge before we go to events. So trying to figure out what works best for everybody. So let's maybe get into some of these tips that you have here. So tip number 1, like giving yourself permission. I know that a lot of people might feel guilty or like they're doing nothing, accomplishing nothing. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about giving permission to rest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I just love that you frame it that way, just permission, right? I think that's usually the first step, and the first thing that we have to do is give ourselves permission, the same way we give ourselves permission to, take on responsibilities. It's the same thing, right? And, the holidays can feel, or resting during the holidays feels counterintuitive, right? There's always one more thing to do. There's always, one more event to attend or something else that you're trying to squeeze in and schedule to meet with someone different, right? Or have another holiday party. But giving yourself that permission to rest is essential for your well-being, and it's essential for your self-care. So the concept that, rest is not about neglecting responsibilities, right? It's really about creating the space and creating energy so that you can actually show up and be your best self. We want to honor our need to rest, and we also want to honor our ability to enjoy the season fully. So when we give ourselves that permission and we find ways to rest throughout the holiday season, like you said, either, before an event, maybe during the event or after, then you're able to be your best self and be who you want to be in each of those meaningful tasks. So sometimes I like to think about different analogies, different things stick with different people. And so given the holiday season, if you think about wrapping up a gift, right, you may not think about, the perfect print on the wrapping paper or the perfect bag or the perfect bow, but really you're just enjoying the whole process of choosing a gift and wrapping it and giving it, right? And so you kind of want to think of rest the same way. It's about creating the moments of joy. It's about creating the space, and you're not necessarily striving for perfection and getting all your responsibilities done and then having rest at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's I like the analogy there, and I try to think about how I build rest into my events that are coming up. And probably the best way that I think about, because it used to be like just go, 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 and that led to burnout. But we're hosting this year, and we don't have a large number of people that are coming, but it's still like all the cooking and cleaning. And I've already started to plan so that things are managed a little bit better, and that I'm able to sit down and rest in amongst the festivities. But it's taking all of the activities and then just spacing it out and doing things before, like some prep, and having that in the fridge, maybe not doing everything on the day of. And that way, because I was like, I want to be able to rest. I guess it's my holiday too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that it's important to remember that if we're not building rest into the events, we're going to need one big rest when everything is over, and that can be really draining and hard to kind of maybe get back on track.
Absolutely, Susan. And I feel like I loved how you talked about, prepping as much as you can before, and even thinking ahead about the activity is a strategy too, and thinking about the layout of those activities. And one tip is, we're later in the segment here, we're going to talk about like micro rests, but finding those ways to have those little restful periods throughout a holiday event can be really helpful. So depending, that might mean, some families like to say prayer before they're eating. So having that moment of grounding yourself before, or even just if you're in the kitchen and everybody's, waiting for you to come with the last dish, just taking that quick pause yourself, a deep breath, and remind yourself that you're going to enjoy the food that you've prepared and you're going to enjoy the company that you're with. And just having that moment itself can really ground you and build your capacity a little bit more for the mealtime of the event, which is really nice. So I think it's just, being really mindful and preparing as much as you can ahead of time so you don't have the massive rest that's needed at the end. And certainly during the holiday season, because some of us have something, 2 or 3 days in a row, evenings and the morning. So those restful periods throughout are really important.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Tip number 2, we're going to talk about reframing rest for real life.
Yeah.
How does that work? Because I think, again, rest might feel like we're not accomplishing anything or that it's indulgent. But how does it show up in real life?
Yeah, thank you. I feel like, rest is really important. It's not always easy to carve out time, like you said, especially if you're a caregiver for, your parents or a family member, or if you have young children, that you have really, high work demands, or you're facing other challenges, right? Different things come up at different times. It's important to remember that rest doesn't have to be these really grand gestures. They can be really small, realistic moments throughout your day, like we were talking about in the previous tip. So I would challenge you to, reframe what rest actually means, and to acknowledge that definition for you is true, and it might be different than somebody else. And so those different truths about rest, it's okay to have that difference. And thinking about it as, it might be 5 minutes with your eyes closed. One day it might be asking for help with some tasks, or maybe it's even just, blasting your favorite tunes while you're making your meals or baking, because that's what brings you joy. And that's actually restful for you because it's bringing you happiness in that moment. So if you think about your body as your brain and your body as like a battery or a car, you don't need a full tank of gas to do everything. You don't need a 100% charge in your battery to do everything. But even short bursts of rest can help in the same way that, maybe you left the house and, you're able to charge your phone up to 80%, right? You're still able to do what you needed to do, or you can still get somewhere with half a tank of gas. But if we never charged it, or if we never filled up the car with gas, then eventually we're going to run out, and we can't do all the things that we need to and the things that we want to. And oftentimes we are prioritizing the need tos and then not the want tos. And so when we don't ever tackle and get into the want tos, that's what leads to burnout sometimes. So a helpful tip is to find out what works for you. Like I said, figuring out what rest means and kind of learn about your sensory processing system. So that might be a new term for some of you. It might be something familiar, but thinking about how your brain takes in sights and sounds and movement and things like that impacts the way we feel, and it impacts kind of our responses in different environments. So, some strategies might be taking a short sensory break where you need to, put your loop earbuds in or have noise canceling headphones. Maybe it's dimming the lighting a little bit while you're working or while you're making your meals. Sometimes it's pausing for a cup of warm tea, or sitting and looking at a fire and just staring into the flames can be really relaxing, or getting a moment of fresh air. Other times it might be setting a timer so you don't, do it for too long, but maybe reading a chapter of your book or indulge yourself into a puzzle. Those are just some small little things that you can do to build it into your day. But just knowing that every small effort to rest is meaningful, and it does add some charge to your battery or give some gas in the gas tank, but ultimately it's helping you charge your brain and your body to do all the things in your day that you need to do and that you really want to do.
Okay, so personal share.
Yeah.
My 2 top ways to rest that don't cost a lot of money and are short but provide a big bang for their buck. Yeah. Slowing down to paint my nails.
Yeah.
And that's cleaning them up, trimming them, base coat, top coat, and then I have to sit there and watch paint dry.
Yeah.
Hard, but I'm it's forced restfulness. And then making a cup of tea, having a cup of tea. It's just, I don't know, soul soothing. And it's something that I can fit in most of the time of the day, and is really good. What can you think, put you on the spot here? Is there one thing that that you build in regularly for this rest that's every day?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple things that come to mind. So one is if I've had a really busy day where I've had to talk to a lot of people, or I've been to a lot of places, so I've had a lot of visual and auditory stimuli, then I, with intention, come home and I'll share it with my family and say, I'm just going to go take 10 minutes. And I put loop earbuds in, sometimes put the mask on and just lie down. And sometimes I'll listen to a meditation type of series. You can listen to 5-minute or 10-minute ones, right? But just literally removing myself from all stimuli for 10 minutes can, I almost feel like I'm at 100% charge again when I come back. But it's just doing that when I do that when I know I've been around a lot of stimuli. And it doesn't happen very often, but I just know that that's one thing that I need to do. Another one that's very relaxing for me is I love the winter and I love snow. So when it's -40 outside, that's when I love to go outside the most. And I love the crunch of the snow and the way it sounds. And I love the heavy work of walking in the snow with all the gear on, and all the frost around the hood and the eyelashes. I love those feelings. That's really relaxing to me. And I agree, having a hot cup of tea is really nice. I obviously like to drink it, but just holding something warm in my hands is very restful too. So yeah, there's lots of different ways to rest. And I think it depends on what you did in your day and what kind of rest you need.
Yes. Well, that's very helpful, and just showing how it's not maybe just even around the holiday season. We can use these tips all year round. And you're Manitoba hardcore.
Yes, I am.
It's awesome. Okay, number 3. So thinking, this I'd have to say I've struggled with a lot, but that rest is a priority, not a luxury.
Yes, yeah.
I can see so many problems, that I've had to go through over life, but yeah, I saw it as a luxury. But yeah, why don't we talk a little bit about how that is something we need to focus on? Yeah,
well, thanks for sharing that, Susan. I think that a lot of people feel that way and can relate to that. I think rest is often seen as something that we have to earn. After we've finished something or accomplished something, then we get to rest. But the reality is that rest is a necessity. It's not a reward. And by building rest into your schedule, it's actually essential for preventing burnout and maintaining your energy for all your daily tasks. And so those are things that you, like I said before, things that you need to do, like maybe your work demands or childcare or things like that, but also things that are meaningful that you want to get done. Like maybe you want to tackle a new project or learn how to play a new instrument or something like that. Those are the things that always get left to the side because we don't have anything left. Yeah. So, and like I think it was the first one we were talking about how rest means something different to everybody, right? And so, and I think you mentioned too that you found when you think of rest, you think, well, it's kind of boring because you're a doer, right? And so as an OT, that's what I love about it. It's very individualized. And so there's no one person that's the same, no one brain that's the same, and trying to figure out what strategies work for each person. So if you're a task-focused person or you love staying organized, and for you, thinking about rest is actually, maybe making it a productive activity is restful. Like being able to organize a closet is actually very restful to you. It might not be restful to somebody else, but that's okay, right? And learning your kind of unique profile. So adding that to your to-do list and honor it as part of your daily routine can be really helpful. So that kind of, goes into the next few practice tips. And that's, intentionally putting a block in your schedule. Sometimes people need that. If we leave it open-ended, then sometimes we don't get to it. So if we're more intentional with that block each day to actually disconnect from your responsibilities and to recharge, that would be really helpful. And that block might look different. And, some people may have to have 20 minutes here and 10 minutes there. Someone might be able to block a full hour. But the idea is to be intentional about it the same way that you would with like a medical appointment or a meeting. Another tip would be to teach those around you about rest and maybe talk about your journey and how you're trying to implement rest as a necessity in your life. Because then it helps hold each other accountable when you're doing it together. So, when you think of in a family home, maybe it's, okay, everybody, we just came home from school and work. I'm going to go take 10 minutes to read. You take 10 minutes to listen to music, and you're going to go play outside for 10 minutes. And then we're all going to come back and, do the next thing we need to do. So it's really, you're also modeling and teaching everybody else about rest as a fundamental need as well. But then it helps you stick to your plan a little bit when we're all doing it together.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then another idea would just be to practice more mindfulness and, deep breathing exercises, even 5 minutes before a hectic setting or meeting or moment, and sometimes even in between, right? You might need to remove yourself for a little bit, take a few breaths, and then go back in.
Yeah. I think my two rests, I guess, that I've been doing is, again, productive, I guess, but it's very restful. Teaching myself watercolor, painting, like finding something on Pinterest and trying to teach myself how to do that, and sewing. And I think a lot of people are like, how could that be restful? But it's like I'm seated, I'm using my hands, I have to slow down and pay attention. And it's something I can put down and then like go deal with the demands of life and then come back and like do 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. Yeah. And I find it very restful, even though it's like brain stimulating. Eventually it gets to that point where it is almost therapeutic in a weird way.
Well, I know I would reframe that in that it's not therapeutic in a weird way. It's therapeutic in a Susan way, right? Because you're really able to, when you find a meaningful activity like that, then you're able to be all in. And so you talked about a few different senses that were activated during that activity. And so by being all in, your brain needs more stimuli to those systems. And then that way your brain's not thinking about other things. Whereas if you sat and read a book, you might have to reread the page 5 times because your brain's thinking about 5 other things. But when you're focusing on learning something new like watercolors, you can actually shut your brain off from all the other things and mindfully focus on the task at hand. Yeah.
Well, that completely explains why it was so hard for me to rest and relax and read a book in Mexico.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. The expectation was restful, but it was like, this is hard.
This is not.
I know. So it's a Susan way. So that's great. Thank you for reminding me that.
Yeah. And I think
go ahead.
That's okay. I just wanted to add one thing I forgot to say is I think it's part of the journey too is just noticing your own energy levels, right? And noticing them in different environments. And I would maybe challenge you to try and track your activities and figure out what's draining your battery and what's adding a little bit more charge to your battery. And that will help you figure out when you need to put those blocks in for rest and just validate your needs for rest and reminding yourself that rest isn't a weakness. It's a sign of self-awareness. It's a sign of resiliency. And ultimately it's a sign of self-care. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very, I'm going to say easier said than done, but necessary.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Good. So just we got two more here. Tip number 4, building recovery time into your day. Kind of you led a little bit into it with that intention, but tell us more about that.
Yeah. So I think, holidays are full of stimulation of all kinds, right? Busy crowds and noisy gatherings. And so really taking that time to, recalibrate, you could say, will help you manage that cumulative impact of sensory information throughout the day. And it helps maintain that emotional balance. And so when you are maintaining that balance, then you have more tolerance and availability and capacity for the rest of the gatherings and the rest of your day. So some strategies to use are like during the activities, try to figure out some sensory tools that you can use during the activities themselves. So things might be like dimming the lights while you're working, or having a smoothie with a straw, chewing gum, having alternative seating, putting on pink or brown noise. I think a lot of people are familiar with white noise. It's a little bit more crackly, whereas pink and brown noise is a little bit softer and smoother. Or having hand tools available during transitions. So those are just ways to help your sensory system when you're doing a task or when you're in the moment. But then also planning sensory breaks or brain breaks. And just like rest can be different for different people, the way we need to give a sensory break can be different too. So some people need more as a sensory break, and some people need less for a sensory break. And it kind of depends on, what kind of activities you do. So doing things like, you said, like having a quiet moment either before or after a stimulating event might be needed, right? Or getting outside and walking and removing yourself from the environment that's really loud. But some people might be in a really quiet space all the time, and their brain or their cup needs a lot more so they can keep going. So maybe it's actually, doing some yoga or some TheraBand exercises and having some movement and muscle work. This may not be true for all, but some people like cutting the grass, some people like vacuuming, and they like shoveling. And the thing that's in common with those 3 tasks is the heavy work that it provides to our muscles. So while that's a chore for some, it's actually calming for others. And so if that's something that you like to do, then go outside and shovel or vacuum if you need to give yourself some muscle work to help you keep going. Mm-hmm. Another strategy, I talked about this at the beginning, is the concept of micro rest. So, spending, 5 minutes focusing on deep, slow breaths, or stepping outside in fresh air, maybe taking a walk around your home or down the hallway at work, or doing 10 wall stretches at your desk can go a really long way. And you're, constantly giving a little bit of recharge throughout the day rather than draining it completely. Mm-hmm. And then I think, especially around the holidays here, understanding what your individual needs are and your unique preferences is setting social limits. And so giving yourself, again, that word permission, to attend events for a set amount of time, and leave early if you have to, and that's okay, as well as choosing how many social events you can handle, or the capacity you have within a week's time. And it's normal for that to be different for everybody, because some people are off, some people aren't, some people are hosting, some people aren't, right? It's very different. Mm-hmm. So, one analogy is thinking of your schedule like a symphony, and the rest that they take, and the rest is like the pauses between the notes. And so those rests and the pauses create space for everything just to flow beautifully.
Yeah. I'm still kind of stuck on that, like, set social limits piece at the end. I think it's so important. Maybe especially when you're going out with your family to an event, I know a habit that I've gotten into is that me and my husband will say like, okay, we are going at this time and we're planning to leave at this time. And like that planning to leave is like our hard stop. Because I don't know if you've ever been out somewhere with somebody else and you want to go and they have no clue that you want to leave. Yeah. And so even just talking about that in advance and saying this is the plan, and not to be so rigid and stuck to it, but just have a plan so that I guess everybody's needs are met when it comes to, I guess, leaving. And we probably got into that habit with just knowing our kids' limits. It was time-based very much. After 2 hours of this, if we don't go now, the meltdown would begin. So we would always dart out before that would happen. And I think that was very helpful for navigating those social situations, is having our limits talked about in advance.
Yeah. And I think another thing I think of is just knowing kind of your unique kind of profile and what you can tolerate and what you can't. For myself, I do love hosting, but there's certain days that I like hosting for different reasons. Like when our Christmas falls, for us to host, I like doing it on Christmas Eve, but I don't love hosting on Christmas Day itself for a variety of different sensory reasons. And so it doesn't bring me the same joy to host on Christmas as it does on Christmas Eve. And it doesn't mean that I haven't done it. I've hosted on both. But if I'm hosting on Christmas, I am a lot more intentional with what we do and how we lay it out and planning accordingly so that I can make sure that I enjoy the holiday and enjoy the time with the family.
It's your ideal energized time.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Okay, so we got our last one. Our last tip here is self-care beyond food.
Yeah. So, well, eating is important to part of the holiday season. Often the focus, it's one piece of the whole puzzle, and balancing food with other practices like movement and connection and reflection, it really helps create that harmony in your life. So again, if you think of that holiday self-care as a symphony, the food is just one instrument, but rest, movement, connection, and reflection, they all work together to create that balance. And so if we go through each of those little areas, so the rest we talked lots about today, scheduling that downtime, being intentional, even if it's 10 minutes, try to utilize that micro rest analogy. For connection, try and be intentional with spending time with loved ones and those who support you and that energize you. Sometimes people find it helpful to guide or plan an activity. So you're the leader of it, so you know that it's falling within your comfort zone and your wheelhouse. And so, for example, if you have a group of people you're spending time with, thinking about, setting up a game of Pictionary versus trivia, right? One is drawing and you're just guessing what's there. And that might be less stressful than, say, trivia, where you have to have a lot of working memory and a lot of facts and knowledge that you need to be able to share, right? So just thinking about how you connect with people, and sometimes you being the leader of those things can help with the comfort level too. Sometimes those larger gatherings and bigger groups that can be overwhelming for some people. So there are other ways that you can connect. So it might be making holiday cards and dropping them off. So there's not this long, big social stay with somebody, but you're just dropping a card off and making a quick connection. Or plan a shopping date with somebody, or you can wrap gifts together. You can watch a movie. You can even do it virtually if you have a long distance friend. And we found that out, during COVID, some of the positives. Or maybe it's even just writing a letter, like old school, to a friend or a family, can provide that connection piece over the holidays. And when you think of movement, try and find movement that brings you joy. I think when we think of movement, people automatically think, I got to go to the gym. But that's just one of a million different ways to move around. And so try and think of movement that you enjoy, and not as damage control, but as a way to clear your mind and reconnect with your body. And you're doing it preventatively. So you're doing it before you actually really, really need it. And reflection just is to be gentle and be kind to yourself and be proud of what you accomplished today and really celebrate the little things. And sometimes you can do that with journaling each night before you go to bed. You can do like a round table with your family at the dinner table. And just trust the process and celebrate what you've done. Don't try not to think about, oh, I didn't get this done or I didn't get that done, but reflect on what you were able to accomplish. And by combining all of these different elements, you're really supporting your self-care in a holistic way. And the balance is the true key to self-care and prevention of burnout.
Awesome. I resonate when you're talking about not worrying about the things that you didn't get done. And when we're looking at reflection, I often recommend to work on, like, if you have to write anything down to get it out, work on a to-do list.
Yeah, there you go.
Things that you did get done,
yeah.
And not to worry about things that you didn't get done, but like it feels really good to be like, oh, wow, look at what I did get accomplished and feel good about that and just realize there's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's very important to step back and reflect on. So that brings us to kind of wrapping up our talk for today. Just as a kind of a reminder here, rest is not a luxury. It is a gift to give yourself. By slowing down and making space for yourself to recharge, you're honoring your body, mind, and I guess the beauty of the season or the seasonal spirit. So we want to think about all the different topics that Kellsey shared with us. By the way, thank you so much. It has been very helpful to be reminded of these aspects. But we want to try to implement some of them, try to even, like we gave you a lot, even if you just take one with you into the holiday time, I think it will be helpful for you. So we'll wrap up. Thank you, Kellsey, for these great tips. And if you have any questions for us, feel free to hit reply to the emails that we send. We'd be happy to answer them. Until next day, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.